gentlemen, welcome to Leadership in Politics with Dr. Abraham. On the show with me today is a best-selling author, Carla Johnson. If you haven't heard Carla before, you'll be amazed by the new insights she has and with the new thing she's writing in her new book. So I welcome Carla. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I appreciate your generosity of our conversation today.
I very much appreciate you because we're in a time now where innovation is really the key to everything. Before I go into the new book you're having, which will be published soon, I'd like you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself, whatever you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. One of the things that I realized as I look back on my career a couple of years ago is that I've actually spent my career helping people rethink the work that they do and the impact that they can have so that they realize the potential that lies within us all to deliver these outcomes that are bigger than we imagine. And I think that's the beauty of looking at innovation and creativity and problem solving, is that when we do these things, we end up surprising ourselves by doing extraordinary work that we didn't realize we had within us. And my background, I actually started in university as an electrical engineer.
Okay.
And because I'm the youngest of five, and that's what they did. So I figured I would just follow the herd, but I'm very right-brained. I ended up with a master's in history.
Nice.
And one of my first jobs was doing business development for architecture firms, architects, engineers, and contractors. And I think it was that introduction to the design process of architects in those really formidable years in my career that made a big difference in how I looked at marketing. And I had both sides of the brain. I had the left side from exposure to engineering, and also the right side with history and so much storytelling. Mm-hmm. And that really was the foundation of how I approached marketing. And, as you know, a lot of marketing involves, change and organizational issues and things like that. And so it was, it's been a wonderful career of helping companies through these different milestones. And what I realized a few years ago is that at its very root, what organizations struggled with was getting the general population to feel competent, confident, and really credible mm-hmm. in being able to solve problems, which is the foundation of innovation. And so that became my quest. And I guess that's my purpose now, is I have a goal to teach 1 million people how to become innovative, creative, critical thinkers by 2025.
That's a good vision that you have. And by 2025, that's very much possible with the new medium now. We can reach millions and millions. And I hope a podcast like this and a show like this will shine light on the wonderful work you're doing, Carla. So you're saying to us, let's rethink innovation. Tell me why. Why do we have to rethink innovation? And before we go there, let's define what's innovation. And we know without creativity wouldn't be any innovation. So what is creativity to you, to your understanding? And what is innovation after that?
You bring up a great point about that relationship between creativity and innovation, because it's one that people kind of discount. And they look at, one is important and necessary, and the other's kind of a fluff and a nice to have. But creativity, it's that ability to bring original thinking to the table. It's bringing new perspectives and having it add value. But I look at innovation as taking it the next step and executing. But to be honest, you can't have innovation without creativity.
True.
And it's almost like creativity is the loss leader that leads to innovation. Mm-hmm. And I only say loss leader is because people don't see creativity always as coming through for the execution. Now, I define innovation as the ability to consistently come up with new, great, and reliable ideas. And I defined a new idea is something that it could actually be an original idea. It could also be the ability to take something that worked in a different industry or situation and move it into your own market, your own industry. So for example, McDonald's used the Formula One pit stop as the inspiration for their drive-through.
Okay.
And so that's new. That's a new idea.
That's an innovation.
And then a great idea I define as, if you think of David Ogilvy, and he talks about a great idea as one that makes you go, wow, and makes you jealous that you didn't think of it yourself.
Yeah.
So it's more subjective, but it's the one that like makes the hair stand up on your arm and gives you goosebumps. It's that kind of a wow.
The aha moment is like, why didn't I think of that? It's
exactly.
Like, yeah.
And then the third characteristic is a reliable idea, and that's one that makes you money. So there's lots of people who come up with ideas that are new, people who come up with ideas that are great, and people who come up with ideas that are reliable. But it's the ability to consistently deliver these ideas that have altered characteristics that lead to innovation. And because the reliability of an idea means it's going to be executable. And there's a lot of people who say coming up with the ideas is the easy part. It's the execution that's the hard part. And I disagree in that if you have better ideas to start with, your execution will be much easier.
What do you think of the thought or concept out there saying creativity is the coming of a new idea and innovation is the execution of it? Do you agree with that thought?
I don't believe they're as clear cut and differentiated from each other. And to be honest, there is a lot of gray area within them. Part of it is probably, the perception of each of them. People see creativity as a nice to have, and they see innovation as a have to have. But if you look at what we're in the midst of from a business environment right now, with all that 2020 has brought us,
yes,
you have to be creative in order to be innovative. And it's about looking at the world with a different
100%. You have to be creative in order to put innovation in the workplace. So before we go into your book, which I'm very excited about sharing the insights of the book with my audience and with me too, so I want to know more about it. But I'm interested in how do leaders have creativity in their work environments, just briefly as a few steps of how to create a creative environment and then innovation. And I'm very much interested in the title of your book, Rethink Innovation, because innovation by itself is a novel idea. What you're saying here, you are challenging the norms, you are challenging the status quo, and you're telling us innovation by itself is not enough. We have to rethink it. I'm interested in that topic. So if you may kindly tell me, how can a leader within an organization have a creative environment? And if they don't have it, what do you advise them?
You absolutely. And so there's two elements there. So one is how they can have a creative environment. And so if we look at rethinking what innovation is about right now, one of the reasons that people aren't innovative and therefore companies aren't innovative is for three reasons. One is that we make innovation way harder and more complex than it has to be. And you look at, that's why a lot of big consulting firms get paid millions and millions of dollars, is because they make it complex. And I'm not saying there aren't situations and circumstances, particularly when you're looking at product development and things like that, that complexity doesn't have a reason. But if we're looking at innovation from that perspective of consistently coming up with new, great, and reliable ideas, it is so overly complex. It's made that way in almost a way to make it elitist. And if you are an executive in an organization and you hire McKinsey or Accenture or Deloitte or EY or somebody like that to come in, of course they aren't going to say, oh, here's the fix. It only took us 5 minutes, because that completely devalues the work that they do. And so consultants are almost incentivized. Yes, consultants.
Wow.
I think to a certain degree, some of it is intentional. If you can't charge a lot of money, if it's a simple answer, you can't charge a lot of money for a long period of time.
Good.
If you're an executive and you say, oh, innovation, it is super easy, here's all we have to do, your credibility as an executive and a leader isn't the same.
That's sad.
Because of the perception of it. Now, again, I'm not saying there aren't circumstances in innovative situations, particularly around products and services where complexity isn't warranted. But again, I believe that a majority of the people, particularly leaders in organizations, make it way harder than it has to be. The other reason, which is relatable to this, is that people don't truly understand what innovation is. And I put a question out on LinkedIn asking people, how would you define it? And you know what? 60 people responded, probably 120 different answers, directions. And so you look at that definition of innovation at scale within an organization, and whatever number of employees you have, you've got that many definitions of innovation, if not more.
And unless the leadership knows exactly what they're doing and they provide their own definition.
Exactly.
Yes, I love that.
And then the third challenge is people don't know how. If you asked the general population how to innovate, they would say, that's not my job, or I'm not a design thinker, or I'm not a data analytics person, or I'm not and you can fill in the blank with, probably an infinite number of things that they're not. And so then they won't. And if an organization is going to be innovative as an organization, it is a requirement that their leaders reverse engineer it down to the employee level. Because if you want to be an innovative organization, you have to start with innovative individuals. And there's several things.
Give me steps. How do you create an individual that is creative, or a creative individual?
Well, one, you teach them a process of how to come up with a new, great, and reliable idea on a consistent basis. And that was one of the things that was so fun about this book is I researched people who were prolific innovators, creative thinkers, critical thinkers, idea generators.
Nice.
And it turned out, whether they realized it or not, they all followed the same process. And the process is teachable. It's actually incredibly simple. And I think that's part of what throws off people who want to make innovation extremely complex, is that it doesn't coming up with a great idea that's executable, that will make you money, doesn't have to be nearly as hard as we make it out to be. So that's one thing is let's put structure and process around that. And I think that's also something that's hard for people to get their head around with making innovation everybody's business, is that they think that they're going to unleash total and complete chaos in their organization.
Because they like the status quo.
They like the status quo, and they like control, stability. And they like to make innovation elitist.
Innovation is really a change agent by its terms. It just needs people to make it happen, right?
Well, and in order to have people who make it happen, you have to educate those people on what it means. And because of the perception, the stereotype of innovation, there's a lot of people who say, oh, no, that's not my job, or I'm not smart enough, or I don't want to get involved in that. But you look at, like, for example, there's a company in Atlanta, Georgia called Park Mobile, and they have an app that you can put on your phone that, you can pay for parking, you can reserve spots, you can do a lot of things with the app. And for 1 week, every 6 months, they close down and they do nothing but innovation. And one of the things that their CMO and head of product, Jeff Perkins, has talked about is it's not that everybody as an employee is expected to come up with a new product or a new service or a new something like that. It's just that we want them to have to contribute to the innovation process. So maybe it's somebody who's really good at telling a story, or maybe it's somebody who's really good at putting together a presentation. Well, when you start to put together teams of people who normally don't work together, you have this amazing and rich ecosystem within the company, and you get to meet people and work with people and work, shoulder to shoulder with people that you wouldn't normally do. And that creates an entirely different dynamic within the company.
That's the diverse thoughts you bring to the company.
Exactly.
And let's put the word out there. Innovation is a good thing, and it's not always negative. Changing the status quo as is, it doesn't have to be negative all the time. It's good to have innovation. right?
It is. And sometimes I hesitate to even use the word innovation because I'll talk to some executives and they'll say, innovation's great, but we don't have time for that right now. What we really need to do is we got to start looking at our customer needs and we have to start solving those problems. Well, that is what innovation
That's
is.
what
So
innovation.
sometimes, exactly. So sometimes we have the stereotype of what it is and what it involves and the price tag that comes along with it. Like if you think about solving a problem, I don't think about that costing millions of dollars. But if we talk about how do we make an organization more innovative, people start to go, I don't know if that's in the budget. I don't know if we have time for this. But everybody wants companies who can solve problems. It doesn't matter how small, at every layer of the organization. And if you create an organization that is an army of problem solvers, you are going to have growth like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm.
And when we keep innovation solely to a specific group with that title or that responsibility, you're only tapping into 10% of innovation's potential because only 10% comes from products and services that you sell. It's the other 90% where you really make the money. So you think about what if you had to choose between an innovation group that was 10% more productive or an entire employee base that was 1% more innovative or productive. Now you don't have all of those hurdles and roadblocks within the organization when you are trying to move actual physical products or services through the organization to get it out the door because people understand what's involved.
Do you agree with me or with the thought out there that people who are innovative, they are less, they are in less need of instructions? They would definitely lead the way. Is that something we can say yes to?
I would say yes by explaining it from the point of view that excuse me, I think
Bless you.
innovative people are more curious.
The curiosity.
And when you're a curious person, you are like you just look at the world around you differently and you observe it. And when you observe the world like that, your brain naturally makes connections. It's just how your brain functions. And so it notices all these things that I think a lot of busy people don't. And then it starts to find these patterns that then your brain naturally connects into the work that you're doing. So, and this is the process that I've been able to see in these innovators. And some people are just born with it. It's very innate. Other people have, been trained in one way or another to do it. And some people who don't understand it think that they're not creative thinkers or they're not innovative. But I tell you, as kids, we are all born this way.
With curiosity, yes.
It's just taught out of us.
Do we? Yeah.
Rewarded out of us.
It's yes, you're right. I very much agree to that. How many people did you interview for your book? How many leaders?
Oh my gosh. Well, so it was over a period of 5 years.
5 years. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Some was research that I conducted into research that was already done in organizations. So if you tallied all of that with my own primary research, feedback that I got from surveys and things like that I did, I would say it was close to probably 2,500 people, 3,000.
Wow. That's through surveys. How did you do it? Through surveys?
Yep. Some was surveys, some was my own personal interview in face over the phone. Some was tapping into research. So it wasn't that I spoke with or connected with all of those people directly. But what I wanted to do was to be able to test this at scale and make sure it wasn't something that was just
random.
Something that I could see in a small sample.
No, this is a large number. So now let's talk about Rethink innovation. Tell me, what do you want people to think? Rethink what is it? What are we talking about?
What I want them to rethink is, one, what innovation is, and two, what's their role. So, and we talk about that a little bit already, but I think when we look at innovation, it is back to everybody has the opportunity, and I would say in today's environment, responsibility to contribute great ideas in order to solve problems.
Okay.
So if we look at innovation from that way, and often when I talk to groups and I say, okay, I understand you don't want to innovate. It feels too overwhelming. There's too much pressure. It's too complex, expensive, and all of those things. I said, you know, how about if we just look at a way that you can consistently come up with new, great, and reliable ideas that solve problems
Mm-hmm.
or fit customer needs.
That's a better way for them to understand it, at least.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also that position of how we look at innovation and who owns the responsibility of it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in, I call it the democratization of ideas and innovation, and
I
that
like it.
and that everybody should be, you know, a citizen innovator, just like we have citizen journalists, and everybody should go to work with that hat on, looking at how do I come up with ideas to solve problems. And it doesn't matter if it's with a big I innovation and it's disruptive, or it's just a little tiny I that makes something better, easier, more efficient, you know, more fill in the blank, instead of just showing up every day at my job, doing the work and go home. You know, why not look at how you can contribute in a way that makes you feel purposeful in your work,
Mm-hmm.
and rewarded and joyful, and, you know, makes you feel like if you have an idea pop into your head, that you should be the one to raise your hand, and you should be the one who says it, and you should be the one who feels good about that idea and what it can contribute.
That takes a lot of education, takes a lot of courage too, because self-doubt is with every, probably there is a large percentage of our people, community or audience or staff, followers, they have self-doubts. Even us, sometimes we have self-doubts for us to say, hey, this is what I think. But, you know, you bring a lot of good points, and education really is the key to this. A book like yours will definitely make not only a dent or a small dent, but definitely will have an impact on understanding innovation and its potential. We see innovation everywhere. You early in the talk, in our conversation, you talked about McDonald's, and not only McDonald's, anywhere you go and there's something, a new idea, that's innovation, isn't it?
It absolutely is. In doing innovative things, and I'll give you an example, and I want to come back to people having confidence, because that's important. But people have ideas whether we realize it or not. It's just that we've been taught to crush that little voice inside of us that tells us we have an idea. Okay. But everybody has something that they care about in their life. Maybe it's their kids, it could be their spouse, their family, it could be something as simple as walking or bicycling or art, or, you know, you name it. I mean, I love to travel, I love to talk to people, I love to eat different foods. And I have this friend, his name is Tim Washer, and he was a comedian, a professional stand-up comedian. And he's an amazing writer. He wrote for Amy Poehler Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live, and he worked for the Conan O'Brien show, you know, worked with Bill Nye, the Science Guy. And, you know, he got married and had kids, and he said, well, maybe I should look at a regular job. And he worked for IBM, but he brought his humor with him. And he went to work for Cisco, and he brought his humor with him. And he had this product launch to do one year, and it was going to come out, you know, ironically on Valentine's Day. And if you think about a Cisco product, you know, they sell routers for telecommunications and internet and all of those types of things. It's a box of metal. So how romantic is a box of metal parts to be launched on Valentine's Day? And so he drew on what he knew about comedy and inspiration. And he remembered being in a comedy club in New York City one night listening to Ray Romano. And he said it was fascinating to watch how Ray made this almost immediate and intimate connection, this relationship with the audience, because he was able to make them laugh. And so he took what he observed there, you know, all these details of what he took in, you know, back to people being curious and noticing all these details. And he said, really, the pattern that I see here is laughter builds relationships. Comedy, then he took that and he related that into the work that he was doing at Cisco with launching a product. And he said, what if instead of he had video of an engineer talking about how amazing this product is, what if we got people to laugh and we just built a really strong emotional,
Connection.
personal connection. You know, what if we just did that? And so that's what they did. It's a 60-second video that talks about the new Cisco router from the same perspective of Valentine's Day and flowers and candy and perfume and love. And it is hilarious. And they didn't, when they released it, they didn't do a lot of PR and marketing and everything around it. They put it on YouTube. They sent it out to the salespeople. And I think within about a week, they had 250,000 views.
It's a beautiful idea.
It is. And you wouldn't think of that as being viral or anything, but it did something powerful. And that's that it got the attention of 3 of the top clients that they had been trying to get appointments with, but couldn't. Thought because the press and the analysts covered this, and they looked at it and they said, okay, this isn't your typical router, you know, technology company. This is a company who's telling a different story. You really should take a look at them. And for a company like Cisco launching a new product, that's gold to just have that volunteer coverage, you know, that earns media attention.
Yes.
Saying, go look at it.
That's priceless because it gives you the attention you need without even seeking it.
Exactly.
All it took just a good idea.
Absolutely.
That will make a difference.
And knowing how to do it. And it's
how to place it, yeah.
It's that ability to take what Tim knows just innately. And that's what I put into a process to teach people how to come up with these great ideas that solve a problem and then share them, you know, pitch them to somebody. Because back to what you said about, you know, we all have hesitations. Nobody wants to raise their hand in a meeting and share an idea and have somebody look at us with that look that makes us feel stupid or that we shouldn't have raised our hand. And part of that is just learning a process to come up with an idea and how to share it that you can practice and you can repeat and others can do the same so that you get better at it in the exact same way that you get better at riding a bike or learning how to cook or knit or drive or any other skill.
So it's a skill you develop. It's a skill. It's a know-how you develop with time, with practice.
It's actually a reminder of what we already know innately as children.
You just
but now as adults, it's just a teachable process.
So somebody looks at your book, and when is the book is going to be released? When is it supposed to be released?
So it's available now for pre-order wherever you buy books.
Okay.
Ebook version will be available March 2nd.
Okay.
And then the hard copy will be available in June. And I won't know that exact release date until closer to June.
So I opened the book. Let's say I'm a reader. I'm one of your readers. So I open the book. What do I see? What am I going to learn from that book?
The first thing that you're going to learn is the process, the perpetual innovation process. And that's a process that you can use perpetually to become a prolific innovator, just like a Steve Jobs or Richard Branson and Oprah Winfrey, fill in the blank with somebody you admire.
Visionaries.
Yeah, these visionaries, but you can take this simple 5-step process and look at how you address any objective you have. It can be you as an individual in the accounting department. It can be you as a vice president leading a team and wanting to get your team to all think alike in order, all think on the same page to come up with ideas that are very original to solve a specific problem. You can use it if you're a volunteer in an organization to come up with fresh ideas. And that's the main thing you're going to learn when you open up. That's the whole front half of the book, is teaching you the process. And I break it down in such simple and minute details that my whole goal was to make sure that everybody looked at it and went, well, I can do that. So to take out all the complexity. Now the second half is about, okay, now you know how to be an innovator. Now what do you do?
So the first one to become, the second one is how to do it.
Exactly. Wow. Let's talk. You have the tools and the process and the skill. Now let's bring it out into the real world and start making things happen. This is what you do as an individual. This is what you do as a member of a team. If you're looking to make your entire organization innovative, this is how you look at it from a leadership perspective. And all throughout, I use lots of examples, case studies, things that people can relate to.
How many pages? How many pages is your book?
I think when it's all done, it's about 240 pages.
Wow, that's a good book.
Yeah.
Good contents.
My intention was to not use the Apples and the Googles and the Amazons, because I think, one, we hear enough about them.
Yeah.
And I think they feel a little bit out of touch. So there's a lot of examples in here of companies that people probably have never heard of.
That's good.
Yeah, and individuals. There's lots of examples of just individuals.
What you're bringing out is the ideas these people, individuals, brought to their environments and how they improved, and you want others to improve as well.
Absolutely. I want them to see someone in this book that they say, that person is just like me.
Just like me, yes.
If they can do it, I can do it too.
Mm-hmm. This is not your only book. You have, what, 10 books already?
This is my 10th book that I've either written or contributed to on a number of subjects. Yeah.
What about marketing, or what other subjects?
Marketing, history. My first book was my master's thesis in history.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I was commissioned to write several corporate histories. The one that you and your listeners would probably be most familiar with was Western Union. I wrote their corporate history.
Nice. You put it in a book, or that's part of one of the cases?
No, well, I wrote their corporate history in 2006. So I've been commissioned.
And you put it in a book?
Yes, it's a beautiful hardcover book.
By its own book, okay.
Yes. I think I've written 4 or 5 corporate histories. In 2015, I wrote a book with Robert Rose called Experiences, the 7th Era of Marketing. And that's about how to develop story-driven experiences for brands.
Is that your bestseller? Which one made you a bestseller?
It would be that book.
That book, yes.
And then since then, I was part of a group called the Fast Forward Forum out of Vienna, Austria, and contributed to 2 books that they published in 2019 and 2020. And then this one will be number 10 in 2021.
So the name of the book is?
Rethink Innovation.
Rethink Innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, the book is Rethink Innovation. The author is Carla Johnson. March or April this 2001, hopefully. It should be released.
March 2nd, 2001 will be the ebook, and then in June will be the hard copy, and someplace in between will be the audio version as well.
I thank you for your insights. Anything you want to add before we say goodbye to our audience?
This was wonderful. I'm just delighted to have this conversation, and I always love to hear people's perspective and their own personal experience with coming up with ideas, sharing them, getting approval. And if you want to tell me your story, I welcome people to connect with me on LinkedIn. I think that's a good channel.
What's your website? Yeah, go ahead. That's a good thing. What's your website? How do people connect with you?
Yeah, my website is carlajohnson.co. There's no M, just CO. And if you go there, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter, where I give people the tools, the education and inspiration so that they can learn how to themselves become innovative, creative, and critical thinkers, so that they can do work that by their own definition feels extraordinary to them.
That's wonderful. I thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. That was quite a good conversation.
Thank you. It was delightful. I appreciate your generosity of inviting me.